Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we all doing today? It is February the 15th of... Hang on, let me get that right. The 15th of February 2026. It's Sunday night. It's just gone 6 o'clock. And we're here once again to have our weekly gathering where us gardeners, we get around, we have a bit of a chat, we talk about what's going on, in particular, a subject for the day. Now, this week we are talking about indoor gardening, and I guess the real first question that I need to ask you is, does anybody grow anything indoors? Now, for me, I grow a lot of things indoors, and particularly my seedlings. And the reason I do that indoors is because I want to grow a lot of plants. I want to grow a lot of seedlings, and I want to start them off early. Now, indoors is a bit subjective because when I talk about indoors, I guess I'm generally talking about inside the house, not necessarily in the greenhouse or in the shed. But you could open it up and say that they are indoors as well. But for me, indoors means inside the house. And my kitchen is absolutely full with lots and lots of young plants. Now, before we get into that, let's actually see if anybody is joining me today. Over on Instagram, Toby Clark 55555 is there. Hope you're well, my friend. Lovely to see you. We've got Nicola saying, see you all soon from a damp Cornwall. We've got Adrian saying, hi, Richard and all. Good evening to you both. We've got Jenny. Hello, everyone. Hope you are well. Good evening to you. We've got Nathan saying, good evening all. Good evening to you. What have we got? Hargrave Gas. Evening all. Hope you've had a good week. We've had quite a lot of snow this morning. That is shocking. That is shocking. Digwell, Lofunex. Can anyone guess the meaning of the comedy show? No, no idea. He goes on to say, hi all, hello to you. Jenny says, no idea, Digwell. Ballycillian, good evening, everyone. Good evening to you. Nathan says, great to see you're on the mend. Indeed it is. We've got Turbo Stream saying, good evening, Veg Podcasters. We've got Anna Jones saying, good evening, gardeners. We have got Andrew all the way in Croatia. Evening, Richard and everyone in the Veg Army. Good evening to you. What have we got? To Ronnie's Swedish sketch. Hello. Have you any eggs? Well, there you go. I never knew that. Nigel, Mr. Muddy Boots. Evening all. Very damp, but getting lighter. Indeed it is. Indeed it is. What have we got? Roxy, stop it. Sorry, Roxy's barking. Ballycillian, all my seeds are started at home. Then when potted up, the hardy ones go in an unheated propagator in the allotment of polytunnels. So let's get into it. Let's get into this very conversation about what I want to talk about is, do you grow indoors? Do you grow your plants indoors? Now, for me, this is something very subjective at this time of year because I honestly don't believe that I could be so successful with things like chillies, aubergines, unless I started them off indoors. And I find that those two plants in particular, there's more, but those two plants in particular need a really long growing season. So if I can grow those indoors, they wouldn't work. We just wouldn't get any of the any vegetables from them. So, as Ballycillian says, all my seeds are started at home, then potted up, when potted up, and the hardy ones go in the heated propagator in the allotment polytunnel. When you say started at home, is that indoors? Jenny says, oh, talking about that thing. Chili Kate, hi everyone. I kill inside plants. Now, I find that interesting because actually that is a problem I often hear, particularly household plants. I mean, I do keep things like ginger, turmeric, cardamoms. I'm trying to think what else I grow on my windowsill. A collection of herbs as well. I do grow those on the kitchen windowsill as indoor plants, but I don't really kill them. And often I think the reason that people kill indoor plants is they treat them like outdoor plants, i.e. they don't water them enough, but they are in a warmer environment. They do dry out quicker and things like that. Would you agree? Would you agree with that? Jenny is saying hello to Roxy. You convinced me, says Digwell. Yes, windowsills, says Ballysin. Brilliant, brilliant. I can see Saul joined over on Instagram as well, but it looks like he's hidden. Anna Jones says, my indoor garden consists of sowing seeds, growing cuttings, and a few herbs in a kitchen windowsill, apart from a crocus bowl. I don't really do houseplants. I find that interesting. I really do find that interesting. Hargrave says, chilies and aubergines, I have to start indoors. Yep, absolutely. Jenny says, I grow my seeds indoors until they have a pair of true leaves. Then they are out in the zippy. I grow indoor plants and herbs indoors. Absolutely. What have we got? What have we got? So, yeah. So, what do you grow indoors? What do you grow indoors? As you know, I tend to focus more on edible plants, which is why I grow ginger, turmeric, cardamoms, herbs, especially over the winter. In the summer, I've got to admit, my herbs, so spring, summer, when it's warm enough outside, my herbs do tend to go outside. But over the winter months, I do like to have a few pots of herbs growing on the windowsill so I can just pick them as required. But yeah, actual indoor plants, I tend to stick with my my gingers, my turmerics, and things like that. But when it comes to seedlings, I feel they do so much better with a bit of warmth just to get them started that they need to be indoors. I've got heated propagators and I've got grow lights, which make it possible. Now, this is actually one of the things that I wanted to mention because on tomorrow's podcast, you'll hear me talking about some grow lights that I have very kindly been sent. And I'm quite impressed with these grow lights, I have to admit. But if you're growing indoors, I do believe that grow lights will make a huge, huge difference. If you look at this behind me here, my indoor, what do you call this? Hydroponics, that's the word. Hydroponics. You'll see it's got grow lights above it, which are providing all these. Well, this tomato plant has been growing for quite a while, but we've got some basil down here and an aubergine there. It's providing those with that light that plants need. And I find that just having those grow lights just makes a huge difference. It really does make a huge difference. My windows faced west and east, so I don't get light in my windowsills all day round. And what that tends to do is you get plants or seedlings becoming leggy, stretched as they try and stretch for the light, and they lean over to try and get the light that they need. Growing it above with these grow lights makes a huge difference. Turbo Swim says, I've managed to grow a few pots of lettuce this winter indoors under my grow lights. I am bad at watering them, though. That is a problem. I do think watering is a problem when they're indoors because it's very easy to forget about them. Very easy to forget about them. Digwell says, I start hundreds of seeds in Jiffy Sevens. Most aubergines, chilies, peppers sold on now. There you go. There you go. I take it they're all indoors as well. Jenny says, I don't use any light or heat. Never felt the need with self-facing windows. I will say self-facing windows would make a huge difference, but do not underestimate how good grow lights can make a huge difference as well. Obviously, I always thought I would never need grow lights. I thought they're a bit of an extravagance. They're going to cost a lot to run. But with LED lights these days, you actually do get a decent, they're pretty efficient. So they don't use so much electricity, and they do a very, very good job of really promoting those early, strong plants. Obviously, if you don't feel the need for them, you don't have to go and buy them. But I really do strongly recommend them. Anybody else out there actually on that subject, who put your hands up if you would recommend the use of grow lights? Now, Nathan has come out with something else that I do grow indoors, microgreens. Again, a great thing to grow, just some pea shoots or some basil seedlings, just growing as microgreens are a great thing to grow indoors. They don't take up much space at all, but they do really give you a good good starting off with some good plants. Nicola, 2 years ago, I grew chillies indoors, first under my bed on a Super 7 with grow lights, and then on the south windowsill. And they fruited this year. I want to try a mini cucumber. Interesting. Turbo Stream says, my front window is south facing. It gets too warm in spring and summer. The kitchen faces north, so gets no sunlight. I do think light is a big issue. This is something that we often overlook, particularly when we're growing indoors, because light is probably taken for granted, and plants seem to do really well, or we think they're doing well with a limited light. But the reality is, indoors, not a huge amount of sunlight actually reaches indoors, believe it or not. We make up for it, we compensate for it, but the amount of light, it's not until you grow plants that are sun-loving that you realise what's going on. And Nathan has put his hands up, and Nicola has also put his thumbs up. Hargrave Gas has put a thumbs up. Nigel says, grow lights are good for an early sowing when daylight is short. Absolutely. Turbo Stream, my porch gets so hot it's no go for plants. Chili Kate has put her hands up as well. Absolutely. So a lot of you are singing the praises of grow lights, which is something I do think is very, very important to use. And as I've already mentioned, got to get the right grow lights, but they are an extravagance at the same time. I forgot where I was going with that, so I'm going to go over to see what somebody is saying. Rob says, good evening all, been transplanting my sweet peppers. So Rob is probably a good example of somebody that grows indoors. Tonight's subject is, are you growing indoors? What are you growing indoors? And I know that Rob, it's an attic, isn't it, if I'm not mistaken. Nicholas says, Nigel, also with all this rain and cloud. Okay. And Turbo Stream, with the grey sky this winter, not much will grow even on a south window. The thing is, one thing I've always got to remind myself, I'm on the south coast of the UK, as you know. We get longer daylight during the winter than perhaps up north. I think there's areas of Scotland, when you really go up north, where you only get a few hours of sunlight a day. And you counteract that with, obviously, in the summer, it can still be very light at 11 o'clock at night, which is really, really weird. Over on Instagram, Josh Booker 23 has joined, and Toby Clark says, evening, Veg Legends. Good evening to you. Good evening, Veg Army, says Kate. Good evening to you. Digwell back in a bit. Bread going into the oven. Excellent. Okay. Amanda, evening all. Good evening to you. Nigel says, on the downside, grow lights can draw the plants and make them leggy, particularly if too much bottom heat. So this is actually an experiment I've ran this year that I'm going to talk about more on the podcast tomorrow. What I've discovered, so it depends how close your actual lights are to your plants. So these new grow lights that I've been sent are on a chain that we can higher and lower them. And what I did is I run an experiment where the grow lights were about 10 centimeters off the top of the plants, and then another one where they were 60 centimeters off the top of the plants. So quite a bit of difference. And what I discovered is the ones where the grow lights were much lower down, the plants grew stockier but stronger, whereas the ones where the light was higher, they became a little bit leggy. So grow lights can draw the plants, but it's also a case of just getting the right light in the right place. One of the things I've said is that they need the grow lights right above them. As they get taller, you higher them up, you make them higher. But yeah, that's just what my experiment has concluded that. Rob says, yes, I grow with 12 grow lights in my attic. A perfect example. And Jenny says, I think as I move seedlings into a zippy at a young age, as they grow slow and strong, zippy is a south-facing garden against their house, so sheltered. A bit of tough love. Absolutely. If it works for you, then that's absolutely fine. I'm hoping that the weather is going to improve so I can get out to my zippy and see how we get on as well. Jenny says, I follow nature. When seeds start germinating from self-sown seeds, I start sowing. If it's enough light for them, it's enough light for me. Always worked really well. Well, that's interesting because we're getting lots and lots of self-sown weeds that are starting to germinate at the moment. So we're having to keep on top of our seeds. Is there enough light? Outside, possibly, but indoors, it may be a different case. Anna says, our porch gets very hot too. Red spider mites live in there, so not a good place for plants. These are all things that we have to think about, isn't it? Because we do have hot and dry conditions. I've also found that with some of my plants grown indoors, I ended up with compost flies flying around my kitchen. I had to get rid of good old, what did I use? Not a Venus flytrap, a sundew, a carnivorous plant, to tackle those fruit flies or compost flies that were in the compost. This is a problem. This is a problem, especially with the peat-free compost, the green waste compost. Fruit flies or compost flies, sorry, are becoming more and more of a problem indoors. Rob says it takes a couple of years to get used to grow with grow lights. I'd agree with that. It does take a while. Nigel says too low lights can burn the tips. It is also a very good point. It's finding a happy medium height versus temperature and duration. That is very true as well. In fact, you will see that on the mission video a little bit later on, where some of my lights or some of my chili plants did get a bit burnt. Over on Instagram, the wasabi farmer has joined and is asking, do you ever grow wasabi, Richard? I have tried to grow wasabi a few times, in all honesty. Never been that successful, which is a shame because I like wasabi, but I've just never been that successful with growing wasabi. I know they like lots of moisture and they really do grow best in like a shallow, fast-flowing stream, which I don't have, but I'd love to be successful with wasabi. Turbo Stream says, one reason I grow direct in a seedbed, the temperature and light will dictate the seeds will grow. They can sort themselves out when they are ready. That's an interesting point, actually. A very interesting point. So there is a thing about nature, but do you think that temperature and light, the plants will sort themselves out when they grow? And what I mean by that is when we do get leggy seedlings, which, let's face it, all of us who grow indoors will get leggy seedlings at some point. Is it really a problem? Do you find it to be a problem getting leggy seedlings when they do eventually sort themselves out? I'm throwing that out there because I want to see your answers. I'm going to keep my answer to that question to myself. Please remember to hit the thumbs up during the show, guys. Yeah, please do hit that thumbs up, that like, that follow, and anything else that you may see. I need to move my onions soon to my onion area where the lights are higher. Interesting. What have we got? People saying hello. Digwa says, I grow wasabi in a raised bed. Nice. I love wasabi. I've just never been that successful with it, but who knows? One day I'll give it another try. I haven't grown it. When did I last try and grow it? When I built the pond. It just didn't seem to do very well, in all honesty. Right, where were we? Nicola has said, I've not used heat and light much as didn't do growing, but just bought a new VitaPod double heated propagator. Is that one of the propagators with lights in the top? Because I've been looking at those. I think they look like a good investment. Nigel says, leggy seedlings. Some you can plant deeper at potting on. Some. Yes, you can. Technically up to the point of the first seed or the seed leaves, isn't it? You can bury them as far as that. But that is one way to sort it in the future. What have we got? Bally soon says, it amazes me every year I get great plants from volunteers that germinate outside and inside when the weather's right. I don't disagree with that. I do think that often we try and well, we're trying to create conditions in order to cause these plants, these seeds, to germinate, which are unnatural. However, what I would say, if we only grew things that were unique to the UK, only ever found in the UK, we would have a very limited supply of um, actual vegetables we could eat. It'd be a lot. I don't know. I can't think of any vegetables that are naturally found in the UK. So perhaps blackberries, apples, maybe. I don't know. I'm going to have to look into that. That's going to be a good question. Turbo Stream says, I sowed onions in mid-April last year, indoors in a seed bed, then transplanted them in mid-May, and they still did okay. Yeah, if it works for you, this is the thing. If it works for you, then there's no harm in doing it. As I said, this show is very much about sharing everyone's experiences. There's no right and wrong answers, just whatever works for you. No problem, mate. This one not got lights. So Nicola's saying that her propagator has not got lights but can add to it. I really like the idea of it. Nigel says Vitapods, excellent. I got 3 double and 1 single. I've been looking at the Vitapods. I'll be honest. I have been looking at the Vitapods because I actually do think they are a good solution for a great number of plants. I'm a bit put off by the price, but because I'm tight. But they are a great example of something that heated propagator, grow lights in the top. I believe you can add extensions to grow them when they get taller. I genuinely do want to get some. You've talked me into it a bit more. I will get some. Digwell says potatoes. Potatoes originate from South America, though, don't they? They only came over in the 1500s, so not technically from this country. I'm trying to think of a vegetable that did grow in this country. Sea kale might be an answer to that, actually. Jamie is joined. Good evening. I found lots of self-seeded leeks yesterday when I was preparing my new asparagus bed. That's the leeks sorted for the year. Excellent. You got to admit, you love it when seeds just germinate on their own. Love that. Bally says self-seeded chilies and tomatoes come up in the polytunnel, etc. Yeah, it's true. I get lots of strawberries and things like that popping up, but chilies and tomatoes. What was the other one? Potatoes, volunteer potatoes as well. When they pop up, they always seem to grow stronger and better than any other plants that we actually plant ourselves, don't they? So, yeah. Rob says I've sown my globe. Is that globe artichokes? The one I bought was secondhand, single story, double, £50. I've got to look into it. I've got to see what we can get. Rob says, start again. I have sowed 2 lots of Globo onions and no germination, so we'll do again. Yeah, onions did germinate very slowly this year, sorry. Digger, oops, wiping the blood off my keyboard, cut my finger slashing the bread. You take care of yourself, buddy. Nothing worse than cutting a finger. Paper cuts are the worst as well. And we nurture seed potatoes, but the ones we missed last year will grow in the place. Yeah, I'm really struggling to think of something that would grow naturally in the UK. Tabistream, as I gain more knowledge about gardening, I do think nature's way is just as good for some seeds. A later spring sowing from most years catch up with early sowings. I think it depends on how much food you are actually eating or how much food you're actually growing. But that's probably an interesting debate. Does starting seeds off early indoors really make it worth a while? That's a question I'm going to throw out there. What's your thoughts on whether or not growing indoors, starting seeds early, makes a big difference? I will say I think with aubergines and things like chilies and sweet peppers, it does make a big difference. It does get them off to that early start. It does give them that long growing season that they seem to really need. Nigel says, pricked out 144 onion seedlings today. Ouch. That took you quite a while, I bet. I've got to admit, I've kind of missed out on the pricking out stage now because I grow all my seedlings in plug plant starters. Things like the Charles Dowding trays, I just put a single seed in that and plant that as a load to go. But that's me. That's just how I do it. Gary says, sorry I'm late again, this time due to catching up on work ahead of a busy day tomorrow. Know how you feel. Good evening, everyone. I'm watching on the phone tonight, which makes a difference from the big screen last week. Indeed, indeed. Digwell, trouble with volunteer potatoes is that they can carry blight. It's a good point. Indeed, it is a very good point. What happened there? I would say that leeks might be British. They might be. Good. They might be a British plant, actually. I don't know. That's one to throw out there. Is that a British plant or what? Jamie says, defo chilies, peppers, and aubergines need that early start. Really makes a difference. I totally agree. I do totally agree. It does make a big difference, and it does get them off to an early start. Digwell also says, no pricking out for me as I sow any agralian plant plug trainers. They are good, aren't they? I've got one right here. They are good, I've got to say. What have we got? Turbo Stream. I never do well with an early sowing of onions. I've tried this again this year with 20 onions, and they are struggling since I pricked them out. So, early sowing of onions. Well, I sowed some onions on Boxing Day, as I do every year. They did. These were now Christmas Day, Boxing Day is let me get my words out. Boxing Day and Christmas Day, I've got those in the wrong order again, are the traditional day for sowing competition onions. So generally speaking, professional competition growers would actually start them off in heat, start them off with lights to get them growing strong and early to give them that long growing period. But if you haven't got heats, you haven't got lights, then they will be slow. My ones have only just germinated and they're still looking a little bit sore. They're a little bit weak. So I'm not pricking them out just yet. They're going to stay where they are. We're going to have to sow a lot more soon, though. Rob says, no, leeks are not British. I didn't think they were. What would be originally from the British Isles? Turbo Stream says, I'm going to sow another 20 cell half tray as individual seeds to compare this week. Excellent. Nigel says, I did use plug plant trainers for sowing seed, but I find broadcast sowing in pots saves on space. Pricking out into cell trays then means no gaps. So I find this interesting, actually. I used to sell broadcast sow in seed trays, but I found myself using lots of seed compost. So I went to the plug plants mainly because I wanted to save time on the pricking out stage. And it does make a big difference, actually. It does save me a bit of time. But I also noticed that I tend to use less compost by using the plug plant trainers. Now, as I said, everyone's different. Everyone's different and got their own experience. And this is why we come together. But this is why I use the plug plant trainers more now than seed trays, because it saves on compost, basically. Bally Sinian says, I have to start at home, windows, no garden for greenhouse, and my allotment is over 7 miles away. I couldn't get to it with winter, spring, daylight hours. Yeah, it's a good point. It is a good point. Digwell says, cabbage, leeks, onions, garlic, basil, thyme, turnips, walnuts, and grapes are originally British. Are grapes originally British? I would have thought they were Mediterranean. I know the Romans grew them here. Actually, leeks being British would make sense a lot. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. So over to you guys to decide. Nicholas says, I've been watching Ben on YouTube using the snail soil starter method. I like the space in deep root runs. So if you don't know what the snail starter method is, it's where you use like a piece of cardboard, for example, put some compost on top, sow your seeds into that compost, and then you wrap it up to make like a snail shape, and that should then lead to them germinating quite well and saves on space. I've seen it a lot. I've not tried it myself because it just feels a little bit too much work. But if anybody has done the snail soil starter method, let me know. Jamie says, always use the Charles Dowden plug trays. Don't have enough patience for pricking out. I'm with you on that. I've got the Hugh Richards ones now as well, and I feel they're better for bigger plants. I thought the Romans brought garlic to the UK, says Ballycillion. I'm not sure. Sorry, not leek, says Digwell. And Chili Cake, quick question. One of our varieties of chilies didn't come up with the others. Can I use the kitchen roll trick for germinating chilies? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. So I can share a bit of experience on it. I've been saving seed from some of my own chilies, and what I did after I had dried them out completely and got them ready for going into storage, is I wanted to make sure that I wasn't wasting my time. So I just put a few on some kitchen roll in a plastic container, kept it damp, and waited for them to germinate. And they did. They did take a while to germinate, but I've also had some varieties of chilies that haven't germinated this year either. So, but we repeat sowing. It may be old seed and things like that. But yes, in answer to your question, yes, you can. I've done that myself. Digwell says, geez, how far back are we going? Roman, Stone Age, Neanderthal? It's a good question. I guess the answer to that is to go back before humans introduced them to the country. That's how far back I would go. Rob says there are not many veg that originated in the UK. Wild cabbage is one. Yeah. It makes you think, doesn't it? If we're growing to the seasons, then we're limited on what we can actually grow. Jamie says the snail technique looks really good. We'll have to give it a go. Give it a go. Let me know how you get on. Yes, I use it for testing outdated seeds, says Nigel to Chili Cake about the soil testing on the kitchen roll. Kate says, I've not had my chance to look at the garden or seeds for a bit, and I know I've been quiet. My mother-in-law's funeral was Friday, and it's been a difficult time. Gardening is really needed for me now. First of all, I'm very sorry to you and your husband about your loss. I hope you are doing okay as best as you can be. Not an easy time at all. I think we're all here for you if you need anything. Gardening, yeah, we need some dry weather, but there's still lots of things, sowing seeds, that we can do now. Buy the Digwell containerways cells, ideal for the tight spaces and easy to pop out. Where can we buy them from then, Digwell? Let us know. Hashtag mission, try a soil. I haven't set that up, have I? But there we go. We've got a mission for next week. Oh, actually, I'll set that up in just a moment. But mission, say a soil snail start against other methods of the same seeds. Ballycillion says cavemen pre-fire couldn't boil vegetables, Digwell. Sorry for your loss, Kate. Thanks, Richard. That's my job for the rest of the show sorted. Sorry. It does work. It does work. Sorry for your loss, Kate. I've not heard of the snail thing or Ben. It's a popular thing going round. I've seen it more and more. I'm still I can see why it works. I'm just not sure it'd work for me. Nigel says Lord Charles and Hugh Richards are just a size variation of container wise, which have been around for a good few years. Yep, again, agree with that. I do agree with that. There's no, I haven't really looked much into them, the container wise ones, but I have to admit, I do like the Charles ones. I do like the Hue ones. They just purely because I like the fact that they are made out of a good thick plastic that would last for years, compared to those cheap ones that I've used for years that fall apart after a season. And I like things that last. Digwell says the only chili and peppers that did not germinate for me were all supplied by Heritage Seed Library. Interesting, interesting. I had some old ones that didn't seed. Sorry to hear that, Kate. And Digwell says, exactly, that is why I've added my trays to the range. Let us know where we can get them from, Digwell. And Rob says, I have had good germination from my chili and tums in Jiffy 7s. Pots, excellent, excellent. Digwell says, and the Lord Charles tray costs twice as much as the usual ones. Just added a name to a brand. Well, that happens a lot, doesn't it? That happens a lot. This feels to me like it's a good time to go to the mission to carry on this conversation, because we are talking about indoor growing. So let me show you my seeds. This was last week's mission that you set me. Okay, so for this week's mission, it was suggested that I show you how my seedlings are, all the seedlings that I've been growing and talking a lot about on the podcast. So I'm in the potting shed, and this seems like a good place to start. So at the moment, it's still a little bit cold out in the potting shed. I've got this Govee, you won't be able to see it very well actually, Govee thermometer, hygrometer set up in here. It connects to my phone via Bluetooth, and I can see how the temperature is out here. Still a little bit on the cold side, but we won't worry about that. Now in here, you will see I have got my onions. They were sown on Boxing Day. They're very slow at the moment. There's no heat obviously, but they're getting there. We're going to have to sow some more fairly soon, but they are slowly getting here. Now over here, this is one of the red Brussels sprouts that I sowed as part of a mission recently. I've just moved out here to see if it'll cope with being out here, if it's not too cold for it. These are obviously in my auto pots things as well. Here we have got some chives, a pot of chives which are just starting to germinate. Again, I don't think the camera will quite pick them up. This is some Welsh onions which are germinating quite nicely. Again, not doing too bad, but they'll be okay. And then at the back here, mustard, pot of mustard. So there's still a lot more things we could be sowing. It's just still a little bit too cold in here for it. So let's head indoors and I'll show you what's going on indoors. So indoors, this is my shelf system that I have here for starting off a lot of my young plants. We'll eventually go out to the potting shed once I get some electricity out there. Down here is just, let me bring it down, just a collection of seeds that we've sown. We've got paprika, chilies, we've got some celeriacs and celery and various things like that. They haven't quite started to germinate yet, so we're just seeing how it goes. Same in there. That is a collection of what have we got in there? I can't remember off the top of my head, but cauliflower. That's it, cauliflower going on in here. Now in this one I've got some of my rhubarb, we've got some aubergines, we've got some cardoons and some globe artichokes in there. As you'll see, the light is a big factor here. These are some chili peppers. I've taken the propagator lid off because they started to burn, but we've got to get those into bigger and bigger pots soon. And also in here, if I bring this around here, some more chili plants as well. Now the real collection is down here where we have even more. So we've got a collection of chili plants, we've got some asparagus. We're over the back there, over there is the courgettes and the cucumbers and tomatoes that you got me to sow a few weeks ago as a bit of a mission. I continue over here with all my other chili seeds and things and peppers and stuff going on. They're all growing quite nicely. These ones this end are a bit leggy, That's because they were moved a little bit too quick and further away from the lights. Gotta say, most of these are all growing under grow lights, but I think you'll agree there's quite a few there and they seem to be doing quite well. We just need to warm up the shed a bit and we can get things outside. Right, back to studio. So is that mission accomplished or mission failed? And don't forget, we need a mission for next week. I've realised I haven't set up the missions, which I can quickly do. If you would, I can do that very quickly. Hashtag mission. In the comments, just start with hashtag mission, and I'll do the same for Cookalong in just a minute. What have we got? Nigel says container wise just added the names. I'm going to have to look into that a bit more, but I can believe it. I can believe it. There's lots of things that seems to happen with. Kate says, thank you guys. Getting the garden is such an amazing coping mechanism. Been so busy, but I'll be glad to get things sown. Again, I don't think we ever really discuss how good for our mental health gardening really is. Even me, I have a hard time at work, come back at the weekend, and if I don't get in the garden, I can be a miserable git. But finding time in the garden really does, or the allotment for that matter, really does calm me down a lot. Digwell says, your onions are very, very slow. Too cold, I guess. Yeah, that's my point. That is why they're in the shed. They are too cold. Very, very, very slow. Thank you. Sending my love, Kate, and thumbs up all, says Nicola. Nigel says, need to get your diesel heater installed soon. Yeah, I do. I'll be honest. The reason I haven't set it up is because that shed is still quite new. I don't want to drill a hole through the wall to plumb in the diesel heater. It's got to be done. I just don't want to do it. And that's me being also that, and I need to run electrics out there, which I can't do until I've removed the shed. But yeah, I really just don't want to drill a hole through my new shed. That's the only reason I'm not doing it at the moment. Nicola says, you have an incredible array of seedlings. Thank you. Digger, I was going to say a bit of heat might help. It would help. This is it. As I said, I brought some more of these this week. I got these Govee things, which they were like 15 quid for two. And they're just great to leave in there to measure the thermometer, and it comes up with graphs and things like that on the app. So for 15 quid, it's a good way of just seeing how warm or cold your greenhouse, your shed might be, to work out whether or not it's going to be too hot or cold to get your plants there. Nigel says, mission, install and film your diesel heater installation. Urgent cold weather is still here. Yeah. It's on the board. It's on the board. There was a mission earlier which needs to be rewritten. I think it was Nicola about the snail starter. Hashtag mission. If you put that on there, that would be great. It will be too late to use the heater soon. It would be. The reason I use it would be too late. I mean, don't forget my diesel heater is also for camping as well. So when we go out in the camper van, so it's not necessary just for that. But yeah, I have the bigger version of those Govees. They're good, aren't they? Those Govees. Say I've only got the small ones, but I'm really impressed with them. They seem to be fairly accurate. Because I actually took one to work and put it in our climate chamber, which is calibrated scientifically, and it is pretty accurate. So I'm quite pleased with them. And best of all, if you haven't seen the graphs that they make, it is how you can find your average temperature throughout the last 7 days, 30 days, and so on. But it also gives you like how cold it gets overnight or how warm it gets during the day to give you a good idea whether or not it's worth putting your plants out there. It genuinely is a good piece of kit. Hashtag mission soil starter versus another form of seed starting. It's on the board, as is everything else. Anyway, let's bring it back to growing indoors. Anybody else growing anything indoors that needs mentioning? I think we've mainly focused on our seedlings and our young plants. The thing is, there's other things we could grow. I've already mentioned things like my house plants, my edible house plants. We've mentioned things like herbs, and we've also mentioned the name escapes me, microgreens, all of which grow indoors, and they can be grown regardless of how much space you have. The only risk is, of course, you end up with, and this happens a lot in my household, worktops and tables full of all these plants, especially if you start too many seeds a little bit too early. And this is why I don't start tomatoes until March, maybe in February. But if they go out too early, they take up space that we don't necessarily have. So yeah, limited space indoors, but that's something we can work on. We'll talk about that in a moment. Digwell says, my LDQ7 has a diesel heater built in as the engine 3 litre is too small to warm the passenger compartment for 30 minutes. There you go. There you go. Nigel says, Govey, you can also set temperature alerts on your phone. Where my greenhouse drops below 3C, I put the diesel heater on with the remote. Yeah, I didn't know you could actually do that. But how? You've got the bigger one, you say. I wonder if that automatically does it? Because to get the data off mine, I have to connect via Bluetooth. So I wonder. I'm going to have to look into that. I will look into that. Nicholas says, have you seen the Mars Hydro shelving? Light and cover, no heating mats, but can add yourself. So, funny enough, this is where I was thinking of going when we were talking about space, is that I've built my own, well, I didn't build the shelving system. I adapted a shelving system just by fitting grow lights and heated propagators on there to use. But there are things out there, grow tents and things like that, that can be used to stack neatly and provide all your plants with all the conditions that they need. Incubators that control the heat and the I can't think of the word. The moisture in the air. I can't think of the right word that I'm looking for, and I know it all the time. I bring this up because actually in the next 6 months, I've got a project at work for a certain large garden, shall we say, that I've got to build incubators for the storage of seeds, but also for starting young plants off. That's going to happen in the next 6 months. We already make them. I've just got to update them. And my idea is these are basically a fridge, or look like a fridge, but the temperature is controlled in them. The idea being this fridge would go in my shed, and I would set it up and it would control constant temperature, and we should be able to get our plants started off without taking up so much space indoors. Fridge being insulated, of course, should hold on to the temperature quite well with heaters and things as well, should keep a good constant temperature. I mean, when I say constant temperature, our incubators are designed to work within 0.5 degree of the set point. So pretty accurate, pretty accurate. Kate says, I've started my rhubarb in my hydroponics and some aubergines. I haven't even touched on hydroponics, have I? Some of you have got hydroponics, I know. Raise your hand if you have hydroponics. Digger says, reach out to Spider Farmer. Every man and his dog is promoting their products at present. Getting a bit boring. I won't do that. They'll have to. approach me if they want me to advertise on the podcast. As I said, I've had a grow light company contact me and what have you. My Govee works Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Can view taps from anywhere with a Wi-Fi connection. Okay. That'll be what we have to look at next. I'm going to have to look at the bigger one then. Temps. Can view temps from anywhere with a Wi-Fi connection. I'm going to have to look at getting the bigger one then. But these small ones are okay. They do what I want it to do. Agreed, Digwell. Just taking notes and watch prices later in the year. I'll talk about that. Nicola, humidity. That's the word, humidity. Yep, humidity. Jamie says, I built a small shed inside my garage, fitted it out with shelves, grow lights and heat mats. Hey presto, Jamie's little hot hut. Yeah, that's kind of like the incubators I'm going to be designing, building at work. Not necessarily designed for well, not all models are going to be designed for plants, but there's a market there that we already sell into that we're going to be selling or making these to sell, bring them up to the 25th century. Get my 21st century, that's the word. And it should be quite exciting. It should be exciting. I'll hopefully be able to document that a bit more as well. I've got a spider farmer, but prefer the Mars Hydro lights. Brilliant. I said the light company that have sent them to me, what are they called? I can't remember. Oasis grow lights. They seem okay to me. Jamie, heat, Matt, not meat. Heat. Yeah, I think that's what he means. I got it. Turbo Stream, never heard of Spider Farm neither. I've seen them a lot. I have Spider Farmer and 3 T5s. Do they use LEDs, those Spider Farmers, or are they the old fluorescent lights? I will personally, for grow lights indoors, I will only use LED lights, but that's my personal opinion. Just want a bit more. Turbo Stream says, I do wonder why certain garden channels get to promote e-bikes, though. Don't know. Not seen it myself. Spider Farmer are the market leaders, then Mars Hydro. Market leaders, but interesting point. Large Govee records temperature, relative humidity, dew point, and VPD. Yeah, these do all that as well, but they don't have the Wi-Fi connection. But I'm going to look into those larger ones in just a moment. My spiders are LED. Oh, okay, that's good. That is good, because I personally only like LED lights. Less electricity used, more efficient, less heat created. But yeah, it should be fun. I must live under a rock then. Spider Farmers I got are LED and T5s are tube LED. Cool. As I say, I will only use in all my lights LEDs these days because they're just so much more efficient. They don't create loads of heat. They don't use as much electricity. They're really, really efficient. So everything these days is LED in my household. Even a car. Actually, is the car LEDs. The car will be LED lights, I should say. Any more thoughts on indoor growing? Hydroponics. I asked about hydroponics. That's where I was going. Who here? I didn't see anybody. I know some of you do have it. Who here grows with hydroponics? Who has hydroponic gardening going on? I've got my one behind me here. It's the West Kent 5-pod. It's probably the cheapest one they do. It cost me £40 at one of the shows. I've got to admit, it's all right. It does the job. It grows plants quite well. That tomato plant has been growing in there for over a year. For those that don't know, hydroponics is, of course, growing it in water. We do have to add plant food to the water in these two forms. One is, I can't remember now. We had this, and it acts as the plant food. It makes the water full of nutrients that the plants need. But I quite like them. They're okay. They don't grow huge plants in my one, but they're good enough. Kate, I've got my hydroponics. Love it. Love it. If I remember correctly, you got one of the popular hydroponic kits as well. Nicola, I've tried hydroponics. I would like to try, but so expensive compared to soil base. Yeah. So here's the thing, and this is, I think, something that we need to bear in mind. For us that have got allotments, that have got gardens, we are very lucky. Some people don't have a huge amount of space in their garden, and they might want to grow food. So moving indoors is sometimes the only option. Some people don't even have a garden. Let's face it. So when we move indoors, hydroponics makes all the difference. It enables us to grow in a much smaller space without any soil. There's no weeding involved as well. There's a lot of good things going on about growing in hydroponics. And if you are struggling with space, hydroponics can make all the difference. Turbo Stream says, my allotment is hydroponic this winter. I think most people's are, actually. Nathan says, got the same West Kent one as you, Richard. How do you get on with it? What do you think of it? I quite like it, but I would like to. They've got ones that work on an app and have better versions. Amanda says, my husband actually 3D printed me a hydroponic set for Valentine's. I can't wait to have a go. Amanda, please share a photo of that. Would love to see that. Nigel, sensor push, do a similar product to the Gove sensor. Awesome. I'm going to look at that in a minute. Sounds how lovely, Amanda. Oh, of course, it was Valentine's Day yesterday, wasn't it? I forgot all about it. Already getting ready for this weekend. But yeah, if you've got hydroponics, let us know your thoughts on it. And in the meantime, we're going to go to this week's Cookalong.
Okay guys, so for this week's Cookalong, you want me to make pancakes, and of course it is Shrove Tuesday on Tuesday, so it's very timely. Really simple. It's actually best, I find, if you make the pancake mix ahead of time, but 3 ingredients is all it takes. First ingredients, 100 grams of plain flour, into which we're going to add 2 large eggs and 300 milliliters of milk. There you go, 3 ingredients to make the pancake mix. I don't understand why people buy pancake mix, but we're just going to give this a good mix to make a good batter. I think that it's about mixed, ready enough now, which means it's ready for the next stage. So I've got a pan here, as you can see, a bit of oil in it. It's nice and hot, which is quite important because we don't want this mix to stick. So all I do, take a ladle spoon worth of batter mix, pour it in. I like to sort of jiggle it around a bit and try and make sure I go around the sides, just to try and reduce the risk of it sticking. We leave that to cook for a bit. Well, I don't think these are going to win any awards for presentation, but we flip it. There we go. So I've got about 5 pancakes out of that mix. I've got to admit, that one did, I took my eye off, so it cooked a little bit more well done than the rest. Got here, I'm just going for some good old simple proper lemon juice, not the fake stuff, the real stuff. Just splash it all over, and then I'm going to be a bit indulgent and add some sugar. give it a try. Lovely. Not the best pancakes I've ever made, if I'm honest, but you can't go far wrong, can you? Right, back to the studio.
I do like pancakes for breakfast, I've got to say. And I think that was chosen because Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, is Shrove Tuesday, Pancake Day. It's also, again, I might be wrong on this, Chinese New Year, which means the two are on the same day. Now, if you head to the veggroundpodcast.co.uk, I've put up a recipe today for a crispy vegetable pancake, which basically involves adding some very finely chopped carrots, onion, cabbage, maybe even kale if you like it, into the batter mix and cooking the pancakes the same as that, just to add a bit of savoury. And then a bit of soy sauce and chili, a sweet chili sauce for dipping as well. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, head to the veggroundpodcast.co.uk to read that recipe. Now, Jenny says, I've never used hydroponics. I have grown houseplants, semi-hydro, but never edibles. Never been something I wanted to do. I try and grow as natural as possible the house plants that are semi-hydro, naturally grow in boggy conditions, so I copy it. The thing is, plants can grow in very wet conditions if the nutrients are there. And again, I've got to go back to the fact that people don't always have the space that we're lucky enough to have. And if that means they have to grow in hydroponics, then so be it. Again, as I said earlier, no right or wrong. It's everyone's different. Turbo Stream has whisk envy. Excellent. I want to see Richard toss it, says Rob. Love pancakes. My video does well every year, especially with overseas followers. Rob says you want Nutella on those. Don't have Nutella in the house. Very, very not something we eat much of. Love your pump action whisk. It's a good whisk, that one. I'm going to say. I think there's another one coming. Yeah, it's a good whisk. That whisk. That's why I use it. And it's a press event day, of course. Tuesday is press event. Anybody going? Let me know if those that are in the know. It's difficult. High Grave Gas says, any suggestion or maybe trying veggie toppings for pancakes? Yep. Not so much toppings, but you incorporate things like carrots and onions into the pancake batter, finely chopped, like I said over on our website. That's well worth trying. Very tasty as well. Toppings. What could you add on top of pancakes and make them more of a savoury? Unless we're talking sweet, when you could go for strawberries, raspberries. The more you think about it, the more the ideas start to swell. Certainly sweet is easier with pancakes, but savoury vegetables, I think, yeah, I'm sure there are things to do. We'll throw that out there, see if anybody else has any ideas. Nigel will be at the press event. Look forward to seeing you there. Gary says, do you have any celeriac for harvest? If so, hashtag Cookalong a celeriac recipe. I need some inspiration. I don't, is my answer to that. That doesn't mean to say, I've just realized I haven't actually set the Cookalong up either. That doesn't mean to say I can't get any, but if anybody does want to make let's get that now. If anybody does want to make a suggestion for the Cookalong, oh, it's already in there, then hashtag Cookalong is what we need. Digwell says, I'm only going to GPE so you can pay me for the SSBC 2026. I'll see you there. Bring the potato along, and I will bring my £4 along for you. Beetroot and feta pancakes. Here we go. Chili cake, beetroot and feta pancakes. That sounds nice. That sounds delicious. Roasted Mediterranean veg with cheese in a pancake is a joy, says Jenny. Excellent. Nigel says, I think we should spend the first 5 minutes of the show placing place in times we think the sneeze will appear. There's always one, isn't there? There's always at least one. I don't understand it because I don't normally sneeze that much. It's just when I seem to go live, it kicks off. It's probably the beard thinking about it. I will wear a face mask. That's because you always sit to the side. Or if you face on, it wouldn't happen. What else have we got? Caught up on the comments. And this is something going on Instagram. Nope, nothing going on over there. But let's carry on. Let's carry on with what we were talking about, indoor gardening. Hydroponics was the thing that we were touching on. Digwell, haven't you got somewhat indoor hydroponics gardening, if I'm not mistaken? You've got a couple. I think you've got the Veggie Pod and another manufacturer. What's your thoughts on those? How well have they been? And if anybody else has got any experience with hydroponics, then let us know. What else? I always feel rude opening my phone while I'm on the show to you, but that's where I keep all my notes that I need to talk about with things with you. Where was it? Reason I have it on my phone is because I use an app that means I can take it with me wherever I go, which just makes life a bit easy. Oh, right. Rant or rave for the week. That's right. Rave is this week. We had a dry day yesterday. Dry day. It was absolutely lovely. I was out in the garden all day. Sun was shining. It was cold, but it was dry. And I heard, I know I keep going on about the rain, but I heard there was a weather report that we've had the longest spell of rain in terms that we've had something like 46 days of rain every day, which is the longest on record for the UK. So we had that long period of dry weather last year. Now we're going for this long period of wet weather. But we do need some dry weather to keep coming. It was good to get outside and actually stay dry. The ground had dried out enough. The chickens had dried out enough as well. So it was worth it. And it really did lift the mood. So very, very happy with that. Nigel says, any photos this week? There is. They will be coming up a little bit later on. Digwell says, me on Tuesday. Hi, I'm Digwell and I love your products. Reply, well, why do you have bogies on your shirt? Yeah, I'm looking forward. So for those excuse me, for those that don't know, Tuesday is Garden Press event. It's an annual event that members of the Garden Press, I say that in brackets because apparently I'm Garden Press, get to attend, and it's where how could I describe it? Companies are trying to get their products or services into magazines, into the press, TV, podcasters, YouTubers, you name it, they're all going to be there. And I always enjoy going there anyway. It's a good chance to catch up with a lot of people that you haven't seen over the winter months and just learn more and get good content from as well, which is what we're going there for, content. So that's why I keep saying about what's going on Tuesday for those that don't know. No, not everybody will be attending, but you can imagine over the next few weeks, content will be full of what's going on at this event. Jenny says, we had a dry day yesterday, but it was so frozen solid day, so no gardening, unfortunately. It's a shame. Rob says, we had a frost Friday night, did not warm up till noon. Muddy Boot says, with all the rain, the chickens thought it was foul weather. Grown. Oh dear. Turbo Stream, rain on Thursday, Friday, frozen on Saturday, and rain today here. Yeah. We've had rain today here all day as well. It's been a little bit annoying. One of the other things that I've got to mention, so I have been invited in a month's time to a product launch with Autopot. I don't think it's on an embargo because they have been mentioning it at Glue, but it's actually to do with tonight's topic as well. It's an indoor growing set. So they've got this new set that is designed for growing indoors. And it was mainly because the Korean market was asking for it, because a lot of the Koreans apparently live in flats and don't have outdoor spaces. Now, you know how much I love my autopots. It's an integrated watering system that keeps our plants hydrated as long as the reservoir is full, which for me is a good thing. It means that my plants in my greenhouse, where it does get hot, they stay hydrated all the time. And we've mentioned earlier about how many people who grow plants indoors tend to let them dry out a little bit too much. Well, with this, it takes that trouble away to a certain degree. The reservoir will probably last a good month before it needs topping up. But unlike the ones that I currently have, the black ones, these have a bit more of an artistic look to them. They do look a bit better, so they would be more suitable for indoors. Obviously, it's a new product. It may not even be on their website just yet. I haven't had a good look, but it is something to keep an eye on. If you are wanting to grow more plants indoors, this might be a good solution. I would say it's more designed at the sort of indoor plant market than our vegetable gardening. But like I said earlier, we do grow some plants indoors as indoor plants, which are edible. So I'm going to be certainly looking into getting some for myself for my ginger, my turmeric, my cardamoms. Rob says, I think we had yesterday and today's rain all together today. Yeah, it feels like it, actually. That does feel like it. Turbo Stream says, I've not been out since Wednesday, picked up a stomach bug, so still recovering. Sorry to hear that. Hope you get better soon. Rob, we get your rain before you do. Rob says, did Autopot have this at Malvern last year? They might have done. They might have done. They had it at Glee, and I know it's been in the pipeline for a while. So, yeah. They might. I didn't go to Malvern, so I don't know. I am sick of rain and cold. And me, yeah, aren't we all? The indoor planter. Jason had it at Glee last year. Lots of different colours planned. That's it. That's the very one. It's called something beginning with K is the actual range. But yeah, the product launch in just under a month's time. I'm looking forward to seeing more about it because I quite like the Autopots. They do have a bit of industrial look, but in the greenhouse, I do think they have been a good God saver because they have been able to keep my plants hydrated as long as I remember to keep the reservoir full, which isn't a problem in those because I keep water butts in them. They stay hydrated. My plants never go thirsty. Where was I going? Help me out here. Where was I going? But the indoor ones, as I said, it's just they've got a bit more of a decorative look to them, which I think promises to look pretty interesting. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Right, let's have a look at your photos. This feels like a good opportunity to see what's going on. Now, our resident weatherman has come up with his weekly warning about the weather. This is, of course, from Digwell, and it says it's going to be cold. It is going to be cold, but we don't mind that. We've spoken. This actually tallies in a bit with what we're talking about this week, isn't it? We keep plants indoors because it's cold outside, but once it warms up outside, our plants will be going outside. And this is why I think many of us are growing seedlings indoors because it is cold outside. Moving on from that, I've got to move this screen because I can't actually see what's going on. These are Nathan's chillies and aubergines that are doing well. I've got to say, they actually do look like they're doing very, very well. I'm also looking at those pots. Are they the 5.4 centimetre ones that I've been using myself? Because they certainly look it. I found those to be a really good size, those 5.4 centimetre pots. Let me know if you are still out there what size pots those are. Moving on from that, we've got some Digwell humour for Valentine's, and I can't see what's wrong with this. The wife is saying that all she wanted was some flowers on Valentine's Day, and the husband says, I got you flowers, wholemeal, self-raising and plain, What's the problem? Communication is there. Now, this last week, Gary shared this photo. It's not Halloween, but it's still quite a scary photo. How big I look on that screen. Now, please do keep sharing your photos because that's all we've had. There was one that came in after I'd done this, but we'd love to see more photos. We really would. Please post them in our Facebook group. Send to me via social media. Email me, richard@theveggiegroundpodcast.co.uk. Don't get me wrong. I understand it is hard to sort of think, what can we post? What photos can we take at the moment? It's a very sort of grey time of year. But we just want to see more photos. We want to get more inspiration from you and what you're doing. Rest assured, I've got to take more photos myself. Something I started slipping on because it just seems a little bit tricky to photograph anything at the moment that is interesting or outside anyway. But want more. We do want more. What else did I have? Let's bring up my notes. One of the things, Nicholas says, I thought I sent in plot shots. You sent those in on last week's show. They were in last week's one. I popped those up. One of the things that I wanted to mention as well with growing, and I think I did mention this earlier, about growing indoors and how we're getting more and more compost flies and what we can do to tackle that. Has anybody else noticed we're getting more compost flies with these green waste composts that we're starting to use more of? Because it's certainly something I'm noticing a lot more. Now, I tackled mine by keeping hold of some sundew, some carnivorous plants in the area that when the flies were flying around, they got stuck to and the plant ate them. Now, easier said than done in many cases because sundews are, well, the flies have to be flying for the sundews to catch them. I did use some nematodes that worked quite well for that, the nematodes, which were designed for compost flies. But they are expensive. Has anybody else found any methods of sort of getting anything done? Digwell says Autopot not a GPE this year. No, they're not. They're not. They were there last year, I think, but as I said, they've invited me to the press event this year. Not the press event, the launch show. But they will be at Glee. They're normally at Glee anyway. Rob says, I need to take some pics in my attic for you. We'd love to see them. We would absolutely love to see him. And hashtag mission, set up a diesel heater. You really want me to set up the diesel heater, don't you? I've got to admit, I do want to set it up and test it anyway because it's been there. Where were we? Rob says, I've been lucky this year with fungus compost flies in the attic. Has it been a problem? Has it been a problem in past years, or has it become more prevalent in recent years since the sort of lack of peat compost or peat-based compost has been used? Anna Jones says microwaving compost works well. Trouble is I don't have a microwave, so I can't do that, and it just feels a bit awkward sticking compost in the microwave at the same time. Rob says, if I get them, I just pull up my yellow fly traps. I think this is an important thing to discuss because who really wants flies indoors? Who really want pests flying around indoors? I certainly don't. So yellow fly traps, I mean, they work, don't they? They're basically like the sundews, which is what I found have worked really well. The suddenly carnivorous plants that in fact, I think last time I mentioned carnivorous plants, somebody went out and spent a fortune on them. I've just found, again, it's because I like to do things naturally. Carnivorous plants, the sundews, even the pitcher plants, maybe not so much the fly traps because they're quite big for that, but the carnivorous plants are a great way to get rid or to control pests, flying pests like that. That's what I found anyway. Rob says 2 years ago I was overrun with them. Was that the first time you had a problem? How long have you been growing in your attic that it hasn't been a problem? And this is a genuine question because, as you know, I am a peat-free gardener, but I know there are some people out there who still very much like to use peat, and you can't blame them when things like this happen. Turbo Stream says the flies are a pain indoors. One reason I've gone back to soil-based compost and peat. There we go, another person. Jenny says a good drench watering helps with fruit flies. On a sunny day, pop them outside for the birds to help you out. As you say, carnivorous plants, I won't use traps. There we go. Nigel says they work very good for me in the greenhouse. Again, good use. And Nicholas says, just check, Richard, you ever pop my plot up? I think it was too close. Just check, Richard. Yeah, I put it up last week. Definitely put it up last week because I remember saying it, because there was something you did with AI, or that's what I definitely remember putting it up last week. Digwell says the latest Hort Week podcast mentions the big problem with fungus gnats in non-peat composts. Actually, I haven't listened to that. I still haven't listened to it, but I saw there was a post Digwell shared with us about the Hort Week podcast about this very conversation. I have got to go listen to it. I'll do that on a train tomorrow. Maybe get a cheap basic microwave and keep in the garage. I don't like microwaves. It's my answer to that. So, yeah. Rob says, I've been growing it in my attic for over 10 years now and normally not an issue. Yeah, I'm with you. Loads of pics missing this week. That's all that was in the group. Not many at all. There may have been like the photos where one or two or more photos were posted on a post, but I think there was only one. There was very little going on in the group this week. Loads of pigs missing this week. I find watering from the bottom definitely helps reduce them. Interesting. I use them in the greenhouse and down the plot. Talk about those things. Hort Week podcast also exposed the true peat ban facts. I've got to listen to it. Really have. A layer of grit or similar helps as well, as they can't get in and out of the soil. It's a fair point. Grit over the top would help, or things like, before things fall all over the place, shell and earth. That sort of stuff would help reduce it as well. This is why I want to find out everybody's answers to that very question. Yeah, shell and earth, grit, anything like that we could use to reduce those gnats would make a big difference. Rob says, one thing I do get in the attic at times is wasps. Wasps are a hard one to deal with, aren't they? I think there are some nematodes. There are some nematodes there. No fruit flies on that shelf. No slugs. I'm just trying to think. Which one are you talking about? No fruit flies on that shelf. Talk about that one. Is that the one you're talking about? I can't remember. It's weird. I remember you saying something about that, and I seem to recall there was something that reduced fruit flies. Oh, on your shelf. Sorry, I'm with you now. Sorry, brain catching up. I sprayed them with liquid glue, says Rob. Fantastic. Right. We've got about 5 minutes to go. So let's fine. Let's go to the giveaway. So we'll start with the Cookalong, which there's only one entry for, which I can't remember what that was now. It was something with celeriac, wasn't it? That's right. I remember now. So let's get rid of that one. We're going to have to cook something with celeriac. So next we have the mission, which there was 3 options for. Let's do that. 3 options. Let's see. Where's my screen gone? There. Let's see who's going to win. We've got Nicola, Digwell, and Muddy Boots. Who's going to be the winner? Nigel, we've set up the diesel heater. Okay, well, that's what we're going to be doing then, isn't it? So we're going to set up that diesel heater next week. We're going to be cooking celeriac. Now, next week, what I want to talk about as well is how... Well, the subject that I think might be appropriate to talk about is how do you preserve your herbs? I know that seems like a bit of a weird time to start talking about preserving herbs, but I think it's an important one nonetheless, something that if we can get some ideas, we can look forward to how we can do it. How do you feel about that? Is that a good subject for next week, preserving herbs? Digwell says, yep, laid it wide up, open to bad press and wrong info supplied by the green washers. A turnaround is in the air. Interesting. Gary says celeriac. Yep, that's what I thought. Something with celeriac. Jenny says wasps can be your friend. They're not many pests. I've always let them. Never bothered me. I've really enjoyed tonight's live. Thank you, Richard and the gang. You're welcome. I would leave them alone, but don't want them in the house. The risk is with wasps is that they can actually destroy your roof. They tend to eat into wood, don't they, as they use the wood to make their homes. And if you get enough of them, they can actually destroy your roof, if I'm not mistaken. I've never actually heard of it happening, but that's the theory behind it. If anybody has heard of a story of somebody's roof falling down because of wasps, then let me know. I'm gonna cough. Right. What we got? Well, Digwell, I heard that seashell stuff stops fungus gnats. Worth using, so why not? Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that we try all these things. It would make sense. I've got to admit, it's difficult to use when our seeds are young, but we need to use these. We need to use as many natural things as possible to reduce our plants or reduce the pests that our plants are suffering with. And if that means we have to use horticultural grit, then why not? Why not indeed? Now, Nigel was saying, thanks for an enjoyable session. See you all next week. Indeed, it is time now to pack up and get out of here. We will be back again next Sunday at 6, where, as I said, I want to talk about preserving herbs and how you would go about it. A good opportunity for you to share your recipes or share your ideas on how you preserve your herbs. Added to that, we're going to be setting up my diesel heater somehow, and we are also going to be making something out of celeriac. For those that are going on Tuesday, look forward to seeing you there. But I think that just about covers everything that we have got. I'm just quickly going to set that up for the closing, but I think it is now time. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you again next Sunday at 6 p.m.